We're live. Hey, how's it going?
Are we live?
We are.
Wow, we are alive.
We are. I feel like
alive.
I wonder, is my camera better? Nope, that's just how it is. All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. So today we're talking Greek. I am the humble pupil.
As am I.
Well,
Humbled
yeah.
to have this opportunity
Yeah.
to walk Jake through Basics of Biblical Greek
Here we go.
by William D. Mounts. And this little walkthrough will be for anybody else who would like to walk through it.
Yep. So I figured this would be a good resource for my study and hopefully for anybody else's that wants to just have some more resources to walk through. So that way it's not just dry reading, right? I guess Mounts has some more stuff than just the book, but this is an addition too.
Yeah.
What makes you qualified to talk on this, Eve?
Well, I don't consider myself qualified to talk on this because I know there are much better individuals out there that can talk on biblical Greek or Greek in general. But my studies, the Lord that was the direction, the doors opened. I see God's promise in that because I didn't want to do languages, but I ended up doing my undergrad in biblical Hebrew, mostly all my electives for the most part. And then I did my master's in exegetical studies at Western Seminary, did Greek and Hebrew there. And so I think about four years worth of Hebrew, 2 years of formal Greek. I tested on a year's worth of Greek at Western Seminary because it was the first year the first bit of Greek is introductory, and I had done that over the summer after I left Moody. So anyway, master's in biblical languages and started it in undergrad as well. So
cool.
And now doing my PhD in systematic theology.
So
where they don't like seeing you using a bunch of the biblical languages.
Really?
Yeah, really. Well, I mean, for the most part, yeah.
Because German is the sacred language there, right?
What on earth are you doing making arguments from the text? Why aren't you using more secondary sources, or what I would call secondary that often people call primary, or engaging with your like Calvin or someone like that, which would be primary, but that is not primary. The primary piece is the scripture. Apart from that, we have nothing to talk about.
Dude, amen. Cool. So let's just jump into this. So the first bit in Mounts, obviously, is pronunciation, which we're not going to spend too much time on, but probably good to just run over real quick.
Yeah. So Jake, but so you're what's your background language? Is just because he's not coming in this like an amateur. He really is. He pretends like it, but he pretty much knows Japanese like the back of his hand.
Oh no!
Not that we all know the back of our hands. I don't know where that came up from. There's a reason for that, but yeah, tell us a bit about your background.
Back of my hands, there's some veins.
I got knuckles.
I mean, I have a fascination with language. I definitely never achieved fluency in Japanese. But I did have a lot of fun. I studied Japanese for probably about 10 years before I moved on to other things. So I should be fluent, but I mostly just have fun with it. Anyway, so here we are. Hopefully you should be able to see the Greek alphabet here.
Awesome.
Does that look all the letters? I believe that is.
Great. So, great. We're gonna have that up on the screen, and we're just gonna start. So, if you got the textbook, if you don't, this is gonna stay up, right?
Yep.
For people. So, if you don't have the textbook, get it, and you can start walking through these with us. Jake's gonna go through Biblical Greek, and I'm gonna be here as a guide. I am not the greatest expert, but I do know it pretty well. And so, if you got Mounts, he's using the 4th edition. I'm using the 3rd, and we're gonna see where they split hairs and where they don't.
Yeah.
But it starts off with, you'll see it's got an index or table of contents, like any book. And it's really important to know the titles of each chapter, as obvious as that sounds, because he does do a good job of sticking with the title of each section. There's some grammar books out there that'll have a title, but then they kind of go on these little excursions. I feel like Mounts was really built for the learner because it stays right on target every single time. He does little things, but he'll throw them in the footnotes if he thinks they're getting a little too far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that as a kind of a framework as you go into Mounts. Footnotes are for the more, if you're looking into deeper questions and you're ready for those. If not, for the most part, you can avoid it and just stick with his main sections. And the titles actually correspond well to what it's about. The preface, you can read that if you're interested. Abbreviations, the professor, there's these little professor guy. He shows up in every chapter. He gives you a little fun, little tidbits along the way. Those are not essential either. The goals, he goes to the goals. That could be helpful for motivation. Basically, the main goal he says is for getting people to be able to interpret the Bible properly or do it well, so you can preach well and teach well and live life well in God's Word. And then he goes over his website. He has this website that's probably really helpful. I've never used it. Is that this is it, TechNav. And he's got good stuff on there, great stuff. Honestly, he's got flashcards that are live on there, and they help you memorization. So chapter 1, the Greek language. He just talks about the Greek, that you're learning Koine Greek, common. Koine means common. And you're not really learning Attic Greek, but there's some. Anyway, we're not going to get that. That's second year stuff. You can get into the distinctions between Greek and get more into, even what Jake and I were talking about, with specific pronunciation. Those are things not to get carried away with right away, but those are things that maybe someone who wants to go on to teach Greek will get more concerned with. But we'll talk about pronunciation in a second. Chapter 2. Goals. Again, the main purpose we're writing this book is to help you to understand better, to communicate more clearly the Word of God. He also says, it's very helpful for biblical commentaries, right? You go to these awesome commentaries, and a lot of times they're citing Greek and Hebrew, and you're like, what in the world are they talking about? Well, having your basics of biblical Greek, you can get into that. You can also get into a lot of the arguments and heresies that come against the faith. It gets down to just simple grammar and syntax. It's not that complicated. Go figure. Just like the Reformer said. Memorization time. Yeah, just good tips he starts with. So chapter 3, the alphabet and pronunciation. Before I go, do you want me to just run through real fast the alphabet and pronunciation, and then you talk if you have questions?
Let's do that. I think we'll just run through this real quick. So if you have further questions about how these operate, I say just listen to this part again. We're not super worried about the pronunciation, but more how the language functions. So we're going to go to window and then go to alphabet. There we go. Cool.
So what you'll notice with this chart, it's going to kind of mess with your head a little bit, because I think he would have the lowercase first and then the capital second. So that might look kind of strange to you if you're looking at the textbook. But as you see, it's kind of the capitals are often, in some cases, very different than the lowercase. So you kind of want to spot that and get used to that. Otherwise, the alphabet is very much like you would see in English, which is kind of fun, which makes Greek a lot easier to learn than Hebrew. In this way, in other ways, Hebrew is easier to learn. But in this way, Greek is nice. The sounds are very similar to English. The looks are similar. You have those few cases where things are a little bit strange, like you see the capital letter on what's one that throws you off, Jake? What's one that would be strange?
When I see delta, the capital one, it just makes me think of in music, delta is used to signify a major seventh.
Okay.
So in jazz notation anyway.
Cool. Yeah, you're right. That is very different. The lowercase d from the capital upper is very different. Mm-hmm. So spot that. Or in the what else?
Zeta
is very different. C is pretty similar. Upsilon is different. So just keep that in mind. But the thing is, why do I point that out? You really just want to focus on the lowercase. That's going to be the dominant use in Greek text. But there are obviously uppercase starts as often in titles and in different in names and other places. You're going to run across those, so you want to be familiar with them and eventually get them down just like the lowercase. But when starting out, just focus on the lowercase. Come back, keep an eye on the uppercase.
Cool.
So pronunciation. Do you want to just give your best shot through there, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'm just gonna guess the alpha is A.
Yeah.
Beta is B. Mm-hmm. Gamma G.
Mm-hmm.
So then just going from there. D, E, Z, E. Right for the eta. Yeah.
E.
Oh, is that long? So what's the difference between epsilon and eta?
You could probably do epsilon.
I think normally that dash means the hard E, but I could be wrong about that.
Well, I just go off he gives the example of obey.
Oh,
obey, unless it's ob. I don't know.
well, the Y would make the E sound
Obey.
in the diphthong.
Obey.
Obey. Obey.
I've never pronounced it that way, but I think typically, where's the? So where was the other one you're talking about? Oops, what would you say? What were you contrasting?
I was on eta and epsilon.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think it's just a slight difference. It's more of a soft.
Cool.
Maybe it could be hard. I've just never done that, so maybe a Greek scholar will, who's into the phonology pronunciation, can help us out there.
Cool. Let's just fly through these so we can get onto the more important stuff. I'm sure there's some that would take issue with that, right?
Yeah, people who like to,
theta, iota, I'm guessing is the one we can use. Kappa, lambda, mu, nu. I'm just guessing we can do X for the, how do you even say that? Key, Xi. Omicron, O, pi, P, rho, sigma, S, or sound, T, same, upsilon. That's confusing to know when it would make a Y sound or a U sound. They're saying it can use both. I guess there's probably some rules for that. We'll move on from there. Phi, sound, and then chi. I guess that's more of a k sound, or k. And then psi would be ps, and then omega, o.
Yeah, and so the he would be lock.
Okay.
Just like almost close. I don't know if that would be a guttural, but it's close.
Cool. Either or.
So yeah, you got alpha. Another way to get your pronunciations right, just listen to the key words: alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, gamma, lambda, or mu, nu, xi. What are we at? Omega, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, he, psi, omega. Oh, and that's usually why I do O long or the heart. Oh, would that be Jake? Long would be O, omega, and then I'd use the for Omicron. I just use the almost like father as in alpha.
Okay.
To distinguish the two in pronunciation, but some people actually, I think, go both with the long O. Is that short O or long O when you go O?
I think that's long.
Okay, so yeah, long O or hard. I don't know. Anyhow, so that's the alphabet, and you can look up online. You can find the ways that professors pronounce. You're going to find discrepancies between them depending on what they're going with, and that's early on, as I say in other videos. When I learned Hebrew, one of my first teachers said, "I don't really care how you pronounce as long as you're consistent with what you do." And that you can actually interpret things properly. So that has been my method, and why you can tell as we're talking, I really don't. As much as it irks some people, I really don't care. Where it's literally a dead language in the sense in which we're learning biblical Greek and biblical Hebrew. We do plan to do some Hebrew video as well. So, but if someone wants to get caught up in the sounds, I think that's great. It's fun to hear people speak. What would theoretically be a proper coinage, but again, it's all theoretical. If we want to get anyway. So what we got? Pronunciation. Yeah, it gives you some tips in 3.3. It's actually pretty helpful. So if you want to get more into it, you can go through there. The diphthongs was probably really important in this chapter. Is getting the alphabet, getting the pronunciations down, the lowercase letters down, and then the diphthongs. So, and that's pretty simple. I don't know if we have to go through the diphthongs.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
So, advanced information, we take care of that. Punctuation and syllabification. Syllabify. This is actually really helpful. They have these rules he gives on 4.4. that basically you might just make a card or something, or just however you want to memorize it. Jake, I think you just roll through and practice all the time reading. So for me, it was, I tend to like little rules to refer back to. So I summarized each of them, and that's 4.4, section 4.4, the rules. But he gives you options there. You can just get used to listening. He's got a thing on 1 John that he reads through online, and you can learn that way just by listening or by looking at the rules.
Yeah, personally, because I hate the memorizing pronunciation rules or little details and languages that they have really odd rules when it comes to pronunciation. I would rather just listen to it a bunch and start to pick up on it by osmosis, which I think ends up being more effective if you're going for that, whether it's where the stress is or how certain things are pronounced. You'll end up becoming more natural, even if you're listening to it not comprehending what's going on. But so find an audio version of John in Greek and just listen to it 100 times, and you'll pick up better pronunciation than probably going through a book. Just depending on what level of pronunciation you want, would be the way I go about it. Again, not from coming from a Greek experience, but from just other experience learning language.
Yeah, that's the same. It's the same stuff. So 4.1, these are really important, the punctuation, knowing that a comma is a comma and that theos with the dot period is a period. But then what's interesting is that the semicolon is just the dot on the top of the last letter. So you think of a semicolon having a dot and a comma combined. In this case, you just find it with the dot up, and then for a question mark is where you see what looks like this semicolon. So the question mark is the dot with the comma. So that's important. You're going to run across that in text, and that's helpful because when you come across a question in a sentence, you're kind of looking at like, how's this main verb work, or where's it? It's almost like, and then you're like, oh, it's a question. So you have to rethink how you're placing your verb in the sentence or constructing it. Diareses. He goes over the accent marks and then when to raise your voice, when to lower it, the acute, grave, and circumflex. Those are important for, like Jake's talking about. It probably would be best to listen to someone like run through a text to get those down. I don't really listen to them. I don't use them when I talk.
What my Japanese teacher had me do when I was taking private tutoring lessons is she would have me listen to a story or some paragraph, and then she would have me match the pacing and try to say it out loud with them, so that by the time you've listened to it a bunch and you've looked at the text and read it out loud a bunch, start to try to match what you say with how they're saying it. So like you can even on some apps slow down the audio recording and start just practice the pacing and the stressing with them, and you'll end up picking up on those idiosyncrasies better.
That's good. Yep. That's wonderful. So let's syllabify. So the rules are basically this is on 4.4. Is that 4.4 for you still? Or were you?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. So it's still the same. It's probably all the same. 4.4. Well, he starts this section with 4.4, but mine starts with 4.3. So he dropped a section. That's nice. Or he moved it over.
Something.
Where's 4.3 at?
4.3 is over
accents. Anyway. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So there is a little bit of shifting of the text between the one, but anyway, the titles are still so far so good. There's one vowel per syllable, which kind of makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no surprise there. And so you'll have, you actually got to go on to the next rule. A single consonant by itself, not a cluster of consonants, so goes with the following vowel. So if a word starts off with a vowel, generally, like you see as it's split up under the one, it's going to be a lonely thing. Ke ka amen, or mar tu ru men. And then in the second one there, and then you could see what he's doing with the first rule. One vowel, consonant goes right. Okay, yeah. So the consonant will follow, or excuse me, the vowel will follow a consonant, or the consonant is followed by a vowel. I'm trying to think if any of this is going to be. I mean, it's pretty simple. Two consecutive vowels that do not form a diphthong are divided. I think that's important. That goes back to why I mentioned know your diphthongs.
Yep.
Because some vowels that look like they could be a diphthong aren't, and you're going to actually want to divide those. That gets kind of tricky, and it's honestly not something to be overwhelmed with or concerned with, because that's my thing. I feel like, honestly, if you want to be just a wonderful Greek scholar, then yes, do it. But I don't think that's what you need to be concerned with at the very beginning of learning a language.
Yeah, if we're thinking about application to personal life and stuff like that, and that's probably not, or even just like from exegetical purposes, it's not the first thing you'd go to.
Yeah. And I think at this stage, if you're literally just starting out Greek as your first language you're getting into, it's really not on the level of importance. You can come back to start to get into the nuances of how to split the vowel, the diphthongs versus ones that aren't diphthongs.
That actually goes to an important point in language in general. Is I think people have this tendency to think they need to master everything before moving on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're reading chapter by chapter in a book like Mounce, people will have the tendency to think, I have to master everything in this chapter before I go to the next one.
Yeah.
But I think that mastery of most topics, but really stuff like this is best done in review. So being able to have a cursory knowledge of things that happen in a book like this is helpful, and then being able to go back and review and then more perfect your understanding of those topics as you go along.
That's really good. That's a very good tip. Dead on. So say no more. But those are helpful rules. Very helpful.
Well, as I'm talking, I'm just thinking about here's my strategy as I go about this, because I don't got time to like make it profitable for memorizing pronunciation, be meticulous about it when I'd rather get into the text as soon as possible. So
yeah,
I'm not going to worry as much about this.
Yep.
I will get to it more at some point, but it'll also be more interesting when I have more context to go along with it.
That's actually a good way to put it. And as a norm or rule, a general rule would be, even if you want to get to a high level of Koine and teach and get a certain pronunciation that you buy as the way to do it, that you can develop later. But right off of that, no matter what your goal is, the goal would be to actually read and translate.
Yeah. If you listen to a guy like Steve Kaufman, he's a language, I hesitate to call him a language theorist because it's not like his degree is in that. But he's learned probably like 20 plus languages well. And his thinking is, since we naturally learn language via exposure, start with exposure and move backwards to grammar. So I'm not saying that what we're doing right now is the wrong way about things, but in terms of how I'd rather go about it from here is starting from exposure.
I feel like that makes sense for living languages. I'm not sure why that makes sense for biblical exegesis. So people don't generally learn Greek and Hebrew just to learn the language and to say they did. People generally learn it so they can do syntax.
Yeah. So the meaning I take from that is more like that's why I spend time.
It's not against what you were saying. I think of some of these guys, that language guys, I hear that oftentimes, but I'm like, I'm not sure it's a one-to-one when it comes to biblical languages or learning Akkadian.
Yeah. I'm really like, because I want to be spending more time in the text. I'd rather be like, take a concept from here and then just start applying what I know. So I'm going to go back to John and just start reading John, even though I don't really get what's going on. So by osmosis, I'm just going to start understanding here's kind of the pacing and the rhythm and what's happening. And then as I'm reading Mounce, it's going to give more context to what I'm already seeing happen in practice.
So, but at the end of the day, that if you learn something and you start reading in the script, in the text, to get more familiar with it, it's the same thing actually that a grammar should be doing, because you'll find that in every chapter of Mounce, he's going to have vocab. And he's going to have a workbook for you. You got to get the workbook if I think personally, because what that does is it gets you into the text. but you're not just reading and floating around trying to find what looks familiar or getting with you're saying two different philosophies. But either way, they actually overlap, but one's emphasizing hopefully getting familiar with other concepts while you're learning your, say you're learning diphthongs right now. Well, if you're reading First John, John, like Jake's doing, he's getting familiar with some other things as well, or trying to, and hopefully you are, right?
Mhm.
You feel like it? So
little pieces here and there. Like
if it overwhelms someone to get into I feel like for me, if I were just starting out and,
Mhm.
and someone said, okay, now you've read chapter 1 through 4, now just start reading through John. I'd feel like I couldn't read anything because I didn't know any vocab. I'd just be sitting there staring at the vowels and but if that is the route someone goes, you got to tell them, like, don't get overwhelmed with the fact that you can't understand any of this.
Yeah. And that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. I'm happy if somebody tells me I want you to listen to John chapter 1 100 times and read it 100 times. Don't worry if you understand much of it at all. That works for me, but it's not going to work for everybody.
Maybe I'll try that method while we're going through this. Just exercise and practice that because it's foreign for me. So vocab. Did you at the end of chapter 5? Remember? 5?
Yep, just about. Say
4.
Yeah.
Chapter 4. So the vocab, we'll just run through those. Did you want to try to read through them?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Starting here.
Yeah.
Cool. So the first word is I get the A's and G's confused, or the G's and L's confused, but this is a gamma, right? So
Yep.
Agalos.
Yeah,
and then angels. Yep.
And then there's that rule at the beginning that says when you get two gammas together, the first one becomes nasal, an N.
So angelos, angelos,
or os, depending again on what you want to do with your omicron.
Cool. Angelos.
Jake's gonna be he's a better pronouncer than I am right now, and I'm just gonna keep throwing curveballs at.
That's right. We were listening to the natural Greek reader read John 1, and he pronounced the kai as k. Like, oh shoot, okay. So and then this next one, I'm not looking at the definition yet. So this is amen. Oh yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And the next one is anthropos. That's man. Cool.
And yep.
So yeah, next word.
So
I wish there was a way to show this on this. What we should do is scan this next time and then have it up on the screen so we can do it together.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice too. Although we gotta be careful of that for.
We can at least like type out the
copyright
words.
issues.
For the dictionary part, we can
we can put the
individual words. Yeah, those can't be. Yeah, cool. So, well, since we're talking about how to read things, why don't we just go instead?
Well, and let's go. I think it was helpful for them also just to run through the list real fast.
Yeah, but just in case they don't have the book in front of them,
Cool.
Let's do.
And Jake and I, obviously, this is clear that we didn't come prepared.
That's right. We're figuring this out.
I don't think neither one of us read a single chapter this week.
I skimmed.
Okay.
I skimmed. All right. So just because we're going through pronunciation, maybe let's read through this. So they should be able to see that now.
Well, let's finish this list of vocab.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
So I'll finish reading it.
Okay.
So again, and you'll notice Jake is actually doing the O on the omicron, where I do as an omicron, but that's a lot of people stick with what Jake's doing, and actually sometimes it even sounds better, more familiar, like anthropos, but I would have anthropos. So that's again, we're going to probably, that might be a difference we'll have, but stick with whatever you do, whatever road you take, stick with it. And I'm sure your Greek teacher, if you have one down the road, will tell you what they prefer.
Cool.
So apostolos, Galilee, graphe, doxa, ego, eschatos or eschatos. Sounds familiar, right? Last things. Zoe, theos, kai, cardia or cardia, cosmos, logos or logos, pneuma, prophetes, sabaton. I'd always have a hard time with that one.
So
Sab and then baton. That's how you would divide that.
So for
Infome.
for pneuma, you actually pronounce the p, or does that turn into
Pneuma,
Pneuma,
or
okay.
just pneuma. Yeah, pneuma is what I would do. But I don't know if there's a rule that if you were to not do it, there'd usually be a rough breathing mark above it. So it'd be more of a, or I think, again, I'm just coming up with that on the spot. Again, that might be something for a rule. Someone knows that, please comment that. But I believe there'd be an indication. In this case, you got the two come together. Pneuma. Cool. I've never been in a Greek class where I heard the guy go pneuma, except for maybe in a Rob Bell series. maybe it's the other way around. Rob Bell does pneuma, and I do it too. I'm learning from the. No, I don't know. Anyway, sorry, Rob. But actually, anyway, wow.
Is what it is.
I want to clarify. I do not listen to him, and I do pray that he comes back to the gospel. I don't know where he's at. Maybe he does trust in Christ for the only way to salvation.
I haven't heard anything new in that front.
Christos.
Yeah. All right.
Let's do that too. Maybe this week you can look up. I know it's in this book actually. The issue. Actually, I think this question about the P and the nu at the beginning of pneuma.
Yeah.
Or pneuma. That is actually dealt with in the section on how to pronunciate.
Okay. So, cool. We can look at later. Sweet.
That's it for the. I mean, oh wait.
Cool. Well, since we talked about pronunciation, let's talk about how to pronounce John 1. So I'm going to let you.
We just did 4 chapters in less than 40 minutes.
Less than a half hour. Cool. Oh no, yeah, cool. just over a half hour.
Cool.
Let's go to not that one. There he is.
I'm not sure how helpful it will be for anybody, but you got to get a review from the first section of Mounts in just about a half hour.
There we go. Cool. Well, why don't you read the first 5 verses? Just
okay.
Let's hear that. How would you pronounce that?
NRK N ha logos kai ha logos ein pros ton theon kai theos ein ha logos autos en arche pros ton theon.
Okay, stop right there. So you were when we were talking about I forget what letter this is, but right here you're giving it a diphthong, which differentiates it from the epsilon, right? Or I think there's an epsilon, right? The S sound. So you're pronouncing this as an A.
A, yeah.
As in obey. You're giving it the full diphthong. Right there. So that could be a good way to differentiate the two.
Okay.
And then when you have this little comma above a vowel, that gets an H sound.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So NRK ein hologos kai hologos ein proston theon kai theos ein hologos. Okay.
And then for 3 panta de autu egeneta. I sometimes, again, I switch, and I do actually tend to do both the hard and the short, the long and the short. I go egeneto or egeneta. So don't listen to me on the ends on those. Kai chorus, utu or autu, egeneto, aude en ha, or yeah, that's I can't see. Yeah, it's a rough. Ha gegenon. Gegenon. En auto zoe ein kai e zoe ein ta phos ton anthropon kai ta phos en te scotia phene kai e scotia auto out. Gosh, I do it. Yeah, I guess I do turn it on the end. I am inconsistent with my Omicron. Auto u cataleben.
Cool. So
Gosh, I never pronounce out loud, so I always read silently. So this is gonna be great for me. I'm gonna grow and learn. This will be good.
Cool. So, like I was saying, for me, how I'm studying, I'm just going over how I do things, just so we can talk about is this a good way or a bad way, and see if it works for somebody else. So this first few verses I've read quite a few times, and I tried as best I can as I'm going through it, pick up the vocabulary and what it is. So the more I go over it, the more I learn. So, but that doesn't help me with like conjugations. Like that's something I'm going to have to go back and learn
Right.
while this is happening. So but I get that John is easier, I'm guessing, in that regard.
He's simple on the surface, but like any book, all the debates come down to the elasticity in the way in which you can interpret, obviously, verbs and the different ways you can take participles, and so it's actually can be just as complicated as some of Paul's writings, depending on what the debate is.
Right.
But at the same time, it is actually, the debates get complicated. The text is not.
Right.
It really is. It's always simple, but the people usually, as we talked about, I don't know, it was you and I, that when it comes to debates about the text, it's usually someone's trying to make the clear text unclear and the unclear clear.
Yep.
And they're forcing the syntax in directions that you have to go, and you have to actually know what they're doing. So that's why it becomes difficult. You're like, well, what's it doing? Okay, yeah, it can do that, but that's a forced interpretation. So you go back to the natural reading.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, yeah, and anarchy in the beginning. This ain is was, right?
Yep.
Okay. Ha is the logos, obviously the word. Kai logos, that's and the word. Ain was pros. I always forget this one.
Directional or with.
Okay. And then tone is the. So with the God, theon.
Yeah.
Kai, theos, and God.
Yeah.
Ain was the word.
Mm-hmm. And notice this goes back to what we'll be learning here shortly, how you just had the O, just a single O looking thing, the Omicron, is an article. And with that, what Jeg just read, Kai Theos Ein Ha Logos, the Ha Logos tells you that's the nominative singular article. And the word before it, Theos, doesn't have an article. And so he's putting Theos up front, but the actual word that's the subject of the to be verb is in the last position. And we know that because it has the article. It has the ha, theos. So that actually should go up front in the way we translate it. So John's emphasizing, this goes what Mounts is going to talk about in the next chapter, that John's emphasizing God by putting it up front, but it's actually should go in the predicate, the following position. So it should be, when we translate it, instead of being God was the word, it'll be the word was God.
So having theos up front makes it a strong, like God,
emphatic
was the word.
So John's not just trying to say that the word, if he was saying the word was a God, which it could be a translation, he would have just put God at the back. He would have just put ha logos ein theos, not theos ein ha logos.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's doing something. He's trying to emphasize that the word was God, but yet it's not the God that he was with in the beginning. So you got really, I think, clearly what Mounts talks about is this is one of the most, probably the best biblical clear, like if there's any way that grammar could ever word the Father and Son as one essence and yet two distinct persons, you in human language can't get better than this. because without the article on theos, it could either be describing an indefinite noun, a god, a thing, or it could be describing in Greek the qualities of the thing. So in this case, that's exactly what John would be doing. Since this in the beginning was the Word, and this Word was with God, what do you say? And the Word was a God? Absolutely not. That's just strange. That goes to the seventh, or not the seventh. The what was it? JWs and Arius.
And not to get too off topic, but I was listening about this today. Is if you want to figure out, it's important to pay attention to the rebuttals that happen, because that often tells you where the problems were in communication. So none of the Pharisaical or the well-educated Jews were trying to establish that they disagreed with the multi-personal nature of God when it was presented in Scripture. When Christ called himself the Son in a way that they deemed heretical, it wasn't that they had a problem with the multi-personal nature of the Father and Son, but rather that Christ was calling himself that Son.
That's an interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, we can chat more later.
Yeah, but I will say, could you highlight what we were just talking about, the little section there, the Kai Theos, just so.
Right here.
So so that's what we were just talking about. For those who, if you're listening to this and you want to go back and if you lost your spot, but it's about the ordering there. So Kai Theos, Ein Halagos, you got that order, which we flip around when we translate. The Word goes first, Theos comes last, but since Theos was put up front by John, he's actually saying, and technically, if we're going to get a technical translation, it'd be the Word was all the qualities of God, or all that would be descriptive of God is the Word.
Cool. Sweet. Well, let's stop sharing here. Awesome. I think that's good for the first little section here. We can get going and figure out how to make this even better the next time around.
Yes.
Cool. So we're stopping on.
So we'll do chapter 5.
Yeah, we'll do chapter 5.
And we'll go through a few chapters, so be ready for that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Talk to you guys later.